Hi, everyone.
Hello there. We're working through Alexander Maclaren's Expositions of Isaiah, and here's one of the passages that made a lot of difference to us. When we were thinking our way out of the Watchtower. We had to confront the prophecy here as very applicable to our situation, living in a religion that officially prescribed itself as the only wise and faithful servant of God in the earth today. So this passage did make a big difference to our self-examination when it came to confronting what the basic problem was with the Watchtower. That when you are wise in your own eyes, there's no room for humility in such a religion. So we're going to read from Isaiah chapter 5, verses 8 to 24 from the NIV and the ESV.
Woe to you who add house to house and join field to field, till no space is left, and you live alone in the land. The Lord Almighty has declared in my hearing, surely the great houses will become desolate, the fine mansions left without occupants. A 10-acre vineyard will produce only a bath of wine, a homer of seed, only an ephah of grain. Woe to those who rise early in the morning to run after their drinks, who stay up late at night till they are inflamed with wine. They have harps and lyres at their banquets, tambourines and flutes and wine, but they have no regard for the deeds of the Lord, no respect for the work of his hands. Therefore, my people will go into exile for lack of understanding. Their men of rank will die of hunger, and their masses will be parched with thirst. Therefore, the grave enlarges its appetite and opens its mouth without limit. Into it will descend their nobles and masses, with all their brawlers and revelers. So men will be brought low, and mankind humbled, the eyes of the arrogant humbled. But the Lord Almighty will be exalted by his justice, and the holy God will show himself holy by his righteousness.
Then shall the lambs graze as in their pasture, and nomad shall eat among the ruins of the rich. Woe to those who draw iniquity with cords of falsehood, who draw sin as with cart ropes, who say, let him be quick, let him speed his work that we may see it. Let the counsel of the Holy One of Israel draw near, and let it come that we may know it. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and shrewd in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and valiant men in mixing strong drink, who acquit the guilty for a bribe and deprive the innocent of his right. Therefore, as the tongue of fire devours the stubble, and as dry grass sinks down in the flame, so their root will be as rottenness, and their blossom go up like dust. For they have rejected the law of the Lord of hosts, and have despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. So, of course, in the original setting, 700 years BC, in Isaiah's day, that we're talking about physical drunkenness, a very prosperous people who are obviously corrupt, and the corruption goes right to the top. And the verses that hit us very hard, though, when we were analyzing what was wrong with the religion that we were part of, were verses 19 through 21. Let him be quick, let him speed up his work. That reminded us, I even knew this verse then. The contemporary of Isaiah was Amos, and Amos had a verse where it said, woe to those who crave the day of Jehovah. Here you've got another version of that. The northern kingdom was prosperous, the southern kingdom was prosperous. Amos was sent to the north, Isaiah to the south. He was living in the middle of Jerusalem. And he's saying that they were unutterably corrupt from the top to the bottom, but of course the leaders get the majority of the blame. And what's their attitude here? Well, if God's going to judge us, let him come on. Now, of course, when we're witnesses, we don't think of that as applying to us. We're urging on the day of Jehovah for other reasons. But it is quite selfish.
Yeah, it is. And if you're craving that day, it seems kind of against humanity almost, that you would crave the day for a witness.
That all the other people will
die.
Perish.
Yeah. So I never was craving it. I mean, I know that we were always pressed that it's coming soon, it's coming soon. But when you live like that, it's coming soon, it should make you want to rescue more people. But I think people get worn out if they're doing this continually forever.
The verses that hit us particularly hard, though, were verses 20 and 21. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and shrewd in their own sight. Is there another religion that you can think of that has in its masthead, basically, its self-description, we are the wise and the faithful? How can a religion like that create humility in its people? So the attitude we had, most of us, was, I can't learn anything from you.
Yeah, you stop learning once you're established in the Watchtower. And now your job is to tell other people. You know, so there isn't a humility to listen to other people and even try and understand them.
And this put darkness for light and light for darkness, this infinite malleability of the definitions on what light is. So when you talk about new light, and there's no other Christian religion I can think of that's big on new light.
Yeah.
But when you talk like that, you actually put light for darkness, because what you're admitting is that what you had before, even what you preached before,
was darkness.
But you don't say that.
You don't want to say that, so you say new light.
I don't know if I ever saw the phrase old light, but it forces you to think in terms of something that was...
You've got new truth and old truth.
Yes, you do. And present
old truth is and present truth. These make no sense at all. If it was true, if it's true now, it must have been true in the past. So it's just a way of covering
your sins.
Yeah.
And it goes right in with a comment that was made to me by someone who left the Watchtower before we did, which was a man who'd actually gone to Oxford University after leaving the Watchtower back around 75. And he pointed out to me very early in our friendship that the Watchtower was just a symptom. It's not a religion that's original. It buys into the doctrine of the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment doctrine, enlightenment, is that light progresses. It always goes forward.
Yeah.
And what comes is good.
Yeah, the change is always better than what was before.
So it never would occur to you as a witness to think, okay, is there a possibility that new light is actually backwards? A backward step? And I know that there's a thought in Lewis somewhere.
That's right. Lewis said, you know, if somebody is traveling on a road and they're going in the wrong direction, for them, progress is to go back.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good illustration. Progress is not equal to change, and it's not always a forward movement. It's a recognition, okay, I'm wrong, so I better go back to the old ways, the better ways.
I'm thinking of Jeremiah 100 years after Isaiah, who said, look to the old paths.
Yeah.
And Malachi said something similar at the end of the Old Testament period. Yes, you have Messiah, who's the great Son of Righteousness coming in the future, but until he comes, go back to Moses.
Yeah. I think too often changes are made for convenience rather than because it is the right way. So if you say it's progress, then you can get away with it. You can kind of cover your tracks, but really it's for convenience that sometimes people change things.
And we had seen, of course, by that time, 1987 or so, that a lot of the interpretations of the past, of the very same passages in the Bible, were completely different, completely opposite oftentimes of what the present understanding of those same passages was.
Yeah. And they go back and forth.
They got no anchor. The witnesses, the Watchtower has no anchor in history, either theological history or the history of God's dealings over the last 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
Here's Maclaren's comments on this passage about the physical drunkenness, which is so stressed in this passage. Drunkenness is, in this text, one of a ring of plague spots on the body politic of Judah. The prophet 6 times proclaims woe as the inevitable end of these. Such sickness is unto death, unless repentance and another course of conduct bring healing. But drunkenness appears twice in this grim catalogue, and the longest paragraph of denunciation, that is verses 11 to 17, is devoted to it. Its connection with the other vices attacked is loose, but it is worth noting that all these have an inner kinship and tend to appear together. They are all in a string, and where a community is cursed with one, the others will not be far away. They are a knot of serpents intertwined. We touch but slightly on the other vices denounced by the prophet's burning words, but we must premise the general observation that the same uncompromising plainness and boldness in speaking out as to social sins ought to characterize Christian teachers today. The prophet's office is not extinct in the church.
The first plague spot is the accumulation of wealth in few hands and the selfish withdrawal of its possessors from the life of the community. In an agricultural society like that of Judah, that clotting of wealth often took the shape of land grabbing and of evicting the small proprietors. We see it in more virulent forms in our great commercial centers, where the big men often become big by crushing out the little ones and denude themselves of responsibility to the community in proportion as they clothe themselves with wealth. Wherever wealth is thus congested and its obligations ignored by selfish indulgence, the seeds are sown which will spring up one day in anarchism. A man need not be a prophet to have it whispered in his ear, as Isaiah had, that the end of selfish capitalism is a convulsion in which many houses shall be desolate and many fields barren. England needs the warning as much as Isaiah's Judah did.
Mm-hmm. He's referring specifically to verse 8, chapter 5, verse 8, where it says, woe to those who join house to house. One of the few times that phrase occurs in the Old Testament. And add field to field until there's no more room, and you are made to dwell alone in the midst of the land. So all the prophets of that era, Hosea, Micah, Isaiah, and Amos, are all on the property owners who are not satisfied with what they have. Covetousness doesn't have any boundaries. They want what you have.
Yeah.
And the property grab, obviously, could a preacher say this today in the Western world? Maclaren lives in Manchester, at the center of the Industrial Revolution in the 1860s through about the end of the Victorian era, 1900 or so.
It's remarkable.
He can't say it.
Yeah, it's remarkable how this is a truth in any age. This is how it works out. You see this same pattern everywhere. So that's why there's wisdom in looking to the past, in looking to history.
I find it reproachable that Christian conservatives, and Maclaren was one, have lost this emphasis. Just as we've made the point before that J.F. Rutherford, the second Watchtower president, was very big denouncing big business, as were evangelicals at the same period. But it's all gone now. So we have so equated Christianity and the religion of Christianity, the cause of Christ, the kingdom really, with capitalism, that we can't say this anymore without getting on the wrong side of our friends. But Maclaren could say it because it was very obvious what the degradation that this thing was causing for most people. In the last section of Maclaren's commentary, he says, such selfish wealth leads, among other curses, to indolence and drunkenness, as the next woe shows. The people described make drinking the business of their lives, beginning early and sitting late. They have a varnish of art over their swinishness, and must have music as well as wine. So in many a drink shop in England, a piano or a band adds to the attractions and gives a false air of aestheticism to pure animalism. Isaiah feels the incongruity that music should be so prostituted, and expresses it by adding to his list of musical instruments and wine, as if he would underscore the degradation of the great art to be the cupbearer of sots. And of course he's alluding here to the sacred use of music in Israel as exemplified by the Psalms and the temple worship. Such revelers are blind to the manifest tokens of God's working, and the operation of his hands excites only the tipsy gaze which sees nothing. That is one of the curses which dog the drunkard, that he takes no warning from the plain results of his vice as seen in others. He knows that it means shattered health, ruined prospects, broken hearts, but nothing rouses him from his fancy of impunity. High, serious thoughts of God and his government of the world and of each life are strange to him. His sin compels him to be godless, if he is not to go mad. But sometimes he wakes to a moment's sight of realities, and then he's miserable till the next bout by his fatal forgetfulness. The Proverbs talk about this too, the way the drunk has to go back and find his sedative again.
Yeah, it's an escape.
I think of a comment that the Christian philosopher Roger Scruton made about us hiding from silence, not being able to stand silence.
Yeah. We want to escape from anything that would leave us in a position where we had room to think. And so we block ourselves in. I think he said, like wall-to-wall music. Anywhere you go, there's always noise. And when you live in the city, there's always noise.
And also Huxley, Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, which we've both read, where he anticipates a world where the powers don't have to crush you because they sedate you, and they get you to conspire in your own sedation, your permanent sedation.
Pleasure, pursuit of pleasure, so that you don't stop and think.
The pursuit of wealth, wine, women, and song, that's the phrase that jumps out at me. This pursuit of pleasure is an escape from consciousness of God. Yeah,
and I think escape from maybe the misery of people's lives. That's why they go to drink. So when in England, when that was a real problem, and the booths came in, they saw that. They saw that people's lives were so miserable that they needed something to help them lift them out of that.
And the booths come in right at the end of this period that Maclaren also lived in, the last generation of the Victorian age. We'll put a link into Ray Franz talking about an application of this idea of covetousness to the Watchtower's obsession, the Watchtower organization's obsession with property.
And we see that more now, and now it's more evident. They've always been interested in building, and that's the part that Franz talks about.
Yeah.
But now we see them selling off properties, so it's to their advantage, all this property.
But in Franz's day, it was of course a sign of God's blessing. So what is it now? Also a link to a book by Walter Brueggemann where he looks at the story of Naboth and his vineyard, and what the king Ahab and his wife Jezebel wanted to do to make sure that the inheritance, which was guaranteed by the law of Moses, could be theirs. So even in the days 900 to 1000 BC, we see that even under the law of Moses, the very factor that Isaiah, Amos, Hosea, and Micah talk about here, the land grabbing was already going on, and it was sanctioned by the people at the top.
Yeah.
So Naboth's vineyard is another link on your screen.